Georgia's government tonight says Russian troops control at least a third of the nation. Russia still ignores demands by President Bush that Russia respect Georgia's sovereignty. Professor Michael McFaul is one of the world's leading authorities on Russia, professor of political science at Stanford University. He joins me here tonight. We thank you for being with us, Professor.
Thanks for having me.
This situation, is it absolutely an impossible one for the United States to resolve or significantly influence?
Well, impossible is too strong a word, and most certainly we could have done a better job of helping to avoid it beforehand. But what do we do now? The key thing now is we have to get the Russian troops back to their pre-invasion places. You have to remember there were peacekeepers, Russian peacekeepers, in South Ossetia, in Abkhazia. Now there are Russian regular soldiers that have penetrated, as you just said, and there's a big disagreement about whether they want to go back to those original places where they were.
Yeah, Michael Ware, reporting from Gori, saying that the Russians appear to be consolidating their positions in western Georgia, and seem to be making absolutely no move of withdrawal to their pre-invasion positions, which would have been obviously on the Russian side of the border with the peacekeepers in the Russian peacekeepers in South Ossetia. There is no, at least obvious, incentive for the Russians to withdraw in any way with control of ports, western Georgia, and a corridor that takes them through to the Caspian Sea.
You're absolutely right. And the diplomatic efforts that are underway, Secretary Rice now being very involved with the French and now on her way to Georgia, they're just affirming the facts on the ground that the Russians created. And they're playing hardball here. They do not want to go back. They want to create a new situation. And if you listen to the Russian officials, the way they talk about it as if this is their Kosovo. This is their Serbia. So they've now bombed Georgia. They've now weakened Georgia. And eventually, over time, they want to free South Ossetia and Abkhazia from Georgian control.
And obviously, again, the principal threat are to those former Soviet bloc nations, which include certainly the Ukraine, Azerbaijan, the oil-producing, the rich energy nations. What are the prospects for the Ukraine, for the Balkans, Azerbaijan?
Well, they're very worried, as you can well imagine. Just as there was a cyber warfare against Georgia, brought down all the Georgian websites, the government websites, same thing happened in Azerbaijan. Ukrainians are extremely worried. You have to remember when Putin visited, and he wasn't really invited, but he just showed up at the NATO summit in Bucharest in April, and he said privately, Ukraine does not exist as a country. Something to that effect.
Right.
In other words, warning NATO, you can't bring in this country because we have claims to some of that territory. So it's very troubling, and it's really a threat to the Western world. Are we going to do something to try to hold this back? And we don't have a lot of leverage. Let's be very honest about that. We got very few levers we can pull in this particular crisis, at least anyway.
And with this crisis, as it unfolds, neither NATO, the European Union, or individually the United Kingdom, Germany, or France appears to have the will to stand against the initiatives being taken by Russia. That looks to be a very dangerous inertia that is gripping the entire region from Western Europe through Central Asia.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think if you look in retrospect, it was that reluctance before which has helped to create this situation in two respects. First of all, it's absolutely clear to me, I've been following this for a long time, and I've written this for years, that we needed a negotiated settlement. We needed a senior diplomat to come in and negotiate, and we needed real international peacekeepers, not the Russians, in these two places. And
the so-called frozen conflicts.
The so-called frozen conflicts, exactly.
Which is an absurd piece of nomenclature, if one could imagine.
And we're paying the consequences for not having stepped up in doing those things ahead of time.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Michael McFaul. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
გაცარიელებულია ქაურობაც, ხო? ეს ნარიადი აფეთქდა.
Wonderful sign of humanitarian concern of the United States in the form of the U.S. military's assistance has arrived. This is the first of many such shipments that will come both by U.S. naval forces and our Air Force. It's a sign of our commitment to Georgia's peaceful future, its peaceful present, our close ties of friendship, our common interests, our common values. This aircraft will provide badly needed supplies for the internally displaced persons who have been left homeless because of this conflict and this invasion by Russia. We are providing nearly $1 million worth of bedding and shelter and other vital supplies for these internally displaced persons.
We see the support. We see the support from the U.S. We see the support from the entire Europe. We see the support from the the civilized countries around the world. We have received a lot of humanitarian aid and a lot of pledges to help us rebuild the economy, the infrastructure, and we all are grateful for that. The government of Georgia is still very capable. We're here, we're working, and it gives us a lot more hope that there are friends that we have throughout the world. The only country that hasn't even offered humanitarian aid is Russia, as you can guess. We can't even get the humanitarian corridor agreed to get the wounded out.